Welcome to Common Ground Helps. My name is Cheryl Rossman, and I'm pleased to present Common Ground to you today. Today we're going to take a tour of our mission. We're going to help you understand what Common Ground does, not in all the different programs that we have, but the essence of what we do. We want you to leave today with a knowledge of what Common Ground does in a cognitive knowledge and a heart knowledge, and we could only do that without our clients. So I have 3 clients with me today who are going to assist me on our journey from crisis to hope. I've got Johnny, Joe, and Teresa. We're going to take a virtual journey of our services. Our 3 impact areas: Common Ground responds to crisis, Common Ground provides safety and advocacy, and a community of support. I'd like to start out with where you were before you came to Common Ground. Johnny, can you tell me a little bit about what things were like before you came to Common Ground?
Well, it was a really hard time for me because of my depression and the things that I was going through. I wasn't living at home, and I felt like I was just couch surfing, going from house to house, from friends to friends, and then eventually I couldn't stay there, so where was I going to go? And the last night that I really had that, it was just a horrible time. The last night of the bad times, I guess you could say, that I was going through, I was laying on my girlfriend's floor, and I was holding my cell phone for an hour debating if I should call Common Grounds or not. And then I called, and I hung up because I got really scared, and then the lady called me back and she said, "You can't hang up now." And then it just spiraled, and I went and got help, and it was just so much better after I made that call.
How old were you?
I was 16.
And you were in high school?
Yeah, I'm still in high school, yeah.
Okay. And was your girlfriend there as a support to encourage you to call Common Ground?
Yeah, she did. She was the one, she told her mom to tell me to call. And her mom were on the other side of the room, actually, through the wall, saying, "You can do it, you can do it," because I was just a mess. I had no hope. I lost my hope, and I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know what else to do. All I knew that I wanted was, I just wanted to feel better. I wanted to get better.
You wanted to feel better.
Yeah, I didn't want to be the same anymore. I hated the person that I was acting and becoming, and that wasn't me. That's not the me inside, so I wanted to find me again.
A lot of people think it's asking for help is a weakness, but it's a great sign of courage. So it took a lot of courage for you to pick up that phone.
Exactly. If you can actually stand there and say, "You know what, I give up, I actually need help," I think that makes you a stronger person, because you're letting yourself know. It's not necessarily other people. You're letting yourself know. Listen, I can handle as much as I can take, but this is it. I can't handle anymore. I'm done. This is all I can take. That takes a very strong person, very strong-willed.
Yes. Thank you.
No problem.
Joe, tell me about your connection to Common Ground.
Well, do you really want to know? Yeah, you know, my life, even from a young age, I've experienced a lot of pain and suffering. I've experienced the streets in death. A lot of violence, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. I grew up, in the dark. In a dark alley, I grew up doing things that people couldn't imagine, and when you hear the word being lost, a lot of people have different definitions of that word, and I grew up going to church, in the church. And my expectations of going to church, I couldn't live up to, what that expectation was. So I walked away from it, and I adapted to the streets, and you have a life of kill or be killed, you survive, you have to, like a chameleon, you have to, you do whatever it takes to survive, and my mentality was so messed up, you know, from a life of abuse, you know, a life of, you know, mental illness that, you know, I understand what mental illness is today, but back then I didn't realize that I had a mental illness. You know, I just thought I was messed up, you know. And, but that became my defense mechanism, you know. And, you know, when people think you crazy, they don't mess with you, you know. But, you know, after a while, it became something I couldn't take anymore. Living a life of drugs, being strung out, and being on alcohol, and you know, but, you know, being brought up in the church and having that instilled inside me, you know, I was always taught that suicide was an unforgivable sin, you know, but I couldn't take, you know, my life anymore, you know. I felt like nobody cared, you know. I felt like it was over for me, you know. So one day I decided that I didn't want to be here anymore, you know, because I felt unloved. I felt like God, if I was where I was, that's what God wanted for me. You know, God didn't love me anymore, you know. And so I decided, you know, I put a gun to my head one time and pulled the trigger and the gun didn't go off. And I went and I ran out into traffic, and, you know, and the traffic didn't hit me, you know, no cars hit me, and, you know, the police came and I decided I wanted the police to take me out. And I ran up against the police and they pulled the tasers out on me. And there's something about getting hit by a taser that'll change your mind about anything. And they took me to the hospital, and it was one officer decided to take me to jail because I had warrants. But one officer decided it was something wrong. You know, he had compassion, and he decided to take me to Common Ground. And he started driving me back to where I ran out in the street. Turns out I ran out in the street right in front of Common Ground.
Wow.
And he took me in there, and I sat down, and the man said, "You'll never get help unless you ask." And, you know, so I began to talk, you know. And I knew then that, you know, God had a hand in, you know, what was happening to me, you know.
Thanks, Joe.
And I got the help that I needed.
Great. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
And Teresa, can you give me an idea of the circumstances where you were before you found Common Ground?
Yeah, you know, my life, it started as a child. You know, my father was abusive to my mother, so I kind of accepted that abuse and mental and verbal abuse was okay. I was a rape victim. You know, I started drinking, using alcohol at 14. I tried to OD by the age of 19. My parents tried to get me mental help at that time, and I honestly believed that the problem was everybody else in my life. And when they tried to take me to the mental hospital, I told the instructors or whatever that they're the problem, not me. And I spent the next 20 years running from me. And You know, I brought 3 beautiful children in the world. And I had moments of times in my life that, you know, I tried to be normal, quote unquote normal. You know, I had a wonderful grandmother in my life who did instill some wonderful beliefs and morals that I tried to live up to. But 26, when she died, I just kept running. You know, I kept running. And more substance abuse and substance abuse until my late 30s, when I hid behind 4 walls. I only came out long enough to obtain substances to use. And it got to a point, I spent 6 months where I only got up long enough to use drugs and slept for 18 hours, got up and used drugs. I did it for 6 months until one day I lived in an apartment downtown Pontiac, and I had decided while I was alone in the apartment, I was going to crawl out the window that went out onto the roof of the building, and I was going to jump off the building. And I thought about, well, I lost custody of my kids permanently. And I thought about the 3 children that would have to live with the fact that their mother killed herself. And after about 3 hours of sitting at the window, I called somebody that was a good friend and told him that he needed to come pick me up immediately or I wouldn't be here tomorrow. And he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Look, either you pick me up or I'm going to be dead." And he wanted me to explain, and I said, "I cannot explain. You just need to take me somewhere before I kill myself." And I didn't know where he was going to take me, but he picked me up, and he took me to Common Ground, and he said, "You have to tell these people what's going on with you."
Okay.
And as painful and scary as it was to me, I told the lady exactly what I was thinking.
Thank you. So, Johnny, you were a teenager and felt depression or darkness, and you had the courage to pick up the phone. And Joe, it sounds to me like you were masking with the drugs and the alcohol and the street life a lot what was going on in your life. And thank goodness for the police officer that decided, no, this man needs help. Let's take him to Common Ground. And Teresa, I'm glad that your friend knew about Common Ground. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that there's a place that they can go to or a place that they can call. And we can help you. We can respond to your crisis and hopefully provide safety and advocacy, which is where we're going to go next. I know each of you have a different experience with Common Ground safety and advocacy. I'd like to start with you, Johnny. Where did they take you?
Well, I checked myself into the sanctuary at Royal Oak.
And that's our teen shelter.
Yep, that's the teen shelter, and they were debating whether, because I was on the cusp of being 17, so they didn't know whether to put me in the One Step Forward program or keep me in that program. But Sandy, it was actually Sandy who said, just keep her here. I think this is the time that she needs. I don't think she needs to go into a Step Forward program. I think she just needs to take some time off, to collect herself, and to just kind of take a chill break, a little chill pill, you know. And that's what they did, and I stayed there for 3 weeks. I did my term and everything, and I wanted to stay longer. If they would have let me, I would have stayed longer. And I know that a lot of people would have been like, well, why on earth would you want to stay there longer than you had to? Because it was actually helping me. I was waking up in the morning, and instead of thinking that I don't want to be here anymore or that I don't like my life, and you know, those constant nagging thoughts that are always right there, always hindering you back, and they were just, it was like a punishment. I was punishing myself every day of my life. And when I was there, it was like a fresh start. I got a clean slate. I didn't wake up like that anymore. I woke up and I was thinking, okay, what are we going to do today? What new things am I going to find out today? Because the longer that I stayed there and the more that I started doing my group therapy and my individual sessions and just talking to the counselors, I realized that a lot of these things that I'm so worried about and I was so depressed about, I was okay. I was really okay because of the fact that I went through them and I went through all these horrible things and all these horrible things happened to me and I thought it was from my fault, but I realized I'm still here. I'm alive. I'm real. I'm whole. I'm a real person. I'm okay. Yay! So that was it. I was done. I was ready. I wanted to get right into it.
Would you say that counseling component was very important?
Very, very important. I know a lot of kids my age say that they don't want to talk about these things, but you have to. I mean, and I couldn't stress it enough how much you have to talk about it. If you don't talk about it, you're letting these memories and these feelings and these things that they pick at you. They like eat you. They eat you alive. You're keeping them all locked up in here. They got nowhere to go. What are you going to do with it?
What things were you keeping inside that you felt the need to punish yourself, basically?
Well, like what happened when I was little with my cousin and being molested, and then I had a alcohol abuse in my family, and I mean, we never knew if we were going to be homeless one night or the next. You never knew it was going to happen. You never did. You didn't know if you were going to eat that night. You didn't know if we can't pay this bill, well then tomorrow we're going to be gone. And it's so scabby. It's so scary because I was a little girl, you know. And these are things that kids should not have to worry about. Kids should be able to be kids. You know, they're supposed to be picking their noses and playing with Barbie dolls and stuff, you know. They're supposed to be being kids, not worrying about where they're going to eat next or worrying about, I was so worried about my parents. I was always worried about my parents. I've always been the worrywart in the family. That's been my job. And I was just always so worried about them. And I know that my dad was depressed too, which made me even more depressed. And then as I got older, I started hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I started doing things that were not like myself at all, and then I was raped, and after that spiraled my depression and just led me into a whole nother realm. I can't stress that enough either. It was just horrible.
So the sanctuary provided you the safety that you needed to express your feelings, as you say, to get them out.
Yeah, because there were so many things, and I never had the chance to really, I never had someone who wanted to sit there and listen to me and who wanted to hear these things. I never had someone like that. I never had someone I could be so intimate and open with. And Monica, she was my counselor. She tried cognitive therapy with me, and it was wonderful. I mean, the last thing that I remember with my therapy was she made me write about the night of the rape. She made me write it out in detail. And I had to read it to her. I had to stand up and verbally read it. And I couldn't write it for 3 months. I could not bring myself to sit there and write it, because every time I did, I'd break down and cry, because I did not. It's one of those things where you know that it happened, but it's one of those things you want to brush underneath the rug. You don't want to face it. But she made me face it.
So you had outpatient care then too?
Yep.
Okay, so you saw the counselors after you were released from the sanctuary.
I really wanted it. I mean, it did wonders for me inside the sanctuary. What kind of impact was it going to make once I was out? Yeah, that's what I wanted to know, and it was awesome. I mean, now my relationship with my parents is awesome. You know, my dad's no longer depressed like he was, and neither am I. I mean, everything's cool now, but at the time it was just a really bad place, and they helped me so much.
Thank you. Joe, I know that you already touched a little bit about how once you got inside Common Ground and you started to open up and you started to talk, what did Common Ground do from that point on?
Well, they sent me to a mental health facility, and then they hooked me up with community network services, where I got a psychiatrist, a case manager, and I began to get therapy there. And, you know, they asked me, what did I want to do? You know, what was the most important thing that I wanted? And I said, I want to be able to feel. You know, I want to be able to feel things and get in touch with my emotions and be able to have a real relationship with people, you know, with my family, and you know, and I started having therapy with Bob Hensley. I got to say his name because he, you know, really made a difference in my life, and you know, you know, because he started telling me about his life and things that he went through, and it got me to talk, and then he was able to get me to reach down and find those things that I didn't even remember, you know. And then he told me one thing. He said, you have to get back that spiritual connection that you lost. And that made the biggest difference in my life, you know, the biggest change, because I started going back to church. And you know, because I was still struggling with addiction even then, you know, but it wasn't as bad, you know, because community, they helped me find shelter, because I was homeless when I first got with Common Ground. They helped me find shelter, and so I was able to go to church, even though sometimes I would go to church high. You know, I kept telling myself, if I keep going, one day I'm going to hear my word. And one Friday night I did. You know, they told me, it was through a friend who was a deacon, but I'd known him all my life. We ran the street, we was in prison together. And he said to me, if you believe, you can turn away from this day, and never look back. And I stood on that.
Good.
And I never looked back and never touched drugs since that day.
Great.
You know, and you know, I always say that God worked through people, and he worked through Common Ground to get me back to where I am today.
Thanks, Joe. How about you, Teresa?
They took me, I went directly to the apartment, packed a bag, came right back. They took me to Westcott.
Westcott is one of our residential
in Farmington.
care. Mm-hmm.
I spent 21 days there. They had a therapy. They had first they did an intake to decide what services they thought I needed. They had a therapist come out and see me for my initial. I had started doing group out there. They did art therapy. We did like a didactic group. You know, we did things like cook together and had like meetings together. You know, and then we had rec time, and it was kind of, you know, just like a time of detoxing from, you know, the isolation and the drugs, and you know, kind of a time to collect myself. And they set me up with CNS, and they set me up with a case manager. And you know, I still struggled with drugs for a while, you know, but my case manager, Pamela, was awesome, you know, and I would go and relapse, and I would call her up and say, I gotta come see you now. And you know, I was always honest with her, you know, and I would always say, look, I'm struggling. What can I do? What can we do? I need help. And she got me, I think, can't remember the therapist's name. She was awesome. And she you know, she made me dig down to find some of the core problems. And, you know, I still go to CNS.
Great.
So
safety, it's not just provisional. It's not just a place to sleep at night, although some of you did struggle with that. It also is a safe place to experience your emotions, to dig deep, to let things go, to reconnect with your spiritual self, and to learn to ask for help when you did have your back against the wall. So Common Ground provides a community of support. We build one if there isn't one already in place. And we're nearing the end. What I'd like to hear now is just if we could get a sentence from each of you on if you had to wrap up where you are today, what would you like people to hear and about your life today?
Well, like she was saying, when you go into these programs, it's like a detox from life. And I think where I am now, I'd actually like to share part of my poem, if that's all right. I think that these last couple verses completely wrap it up. They just wrap it up so nicely. My past, my pain, my trials no longer rule my existence. I'm stronger now. I finally stood my ground. Where I was then and where I am now are two completely different things. I once was lost, but I find my wings, and now I find myself flying free. And I think that's where I am now. I'm me again, and it feels so wonderful to be me again. And I know that I'm stronger, and I'm going to be a better person. I'm going into cognitive psychology. I'm going to. This is what I want to do now. I want to help people, so that's what I'm going to do.
Joe, in a sentence, where are you at today?
Today, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, love your brother as I have loved you. And I have something now that I've never had before, and that's compassion. So, I'm a deacon in the church. I got keys to the church. They trust me with keys to the church. And Pentecostal Church of God, that is. And to be able to help to tell my testimony with Common Ground so other people would know, that people are out there, okay, that you can reach out to. Don't just lay there on the couch and let your life waste away.
Teresa?
Today, I've run to family and a lifeline, and not to drugs and the death to destruction.
Wow. You run to family and a lifeline, and not to drugs and destruction. It's very powerful. All three of you, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. And by you sharing your experience, you will give others hope. You will be giving back. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your story. And I hope that you are able to continue on your recovery paths and help other people know what to do to respond to crisis. Provide that safety and help them find a community of support. Thank you for joining us today. And I hope that you learned something a little bit more about Common Ground. I hope that you come away with a better understanding, not of our programs, but how we truly do impact people's lives and change them for the better.